episode of the Sports Informer podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This week, I will be exploring a similar topic, but in relation to the growing coverage of women's sports and if this has been done strategically to widen a paying demographic or for inclusivity itself. It's been no secret that women's sport has grown exponentially over the past few years, with each tournament breaking new records in terms of attendances and viewing figures. Therefore, it's been no surprise that broadcasters such as Sky Sports have latched onto this trend, and in the aftermath of the growing love for the women's game, they signed a new unprecedented rights deal with the WSL in 2021. If we look back and delve into the interest in women's sports, we can see that in 2013 women's sport accounted for just 5 to 10% of coverage, whereas 10 years later in 2023 it accounted for 22% on BBC and 14% on Sky Sports. However, if we look at the print media side of this, we can see that in the same time period, The Times and The Guardian still reside in the 4 to 5% coverage mark, which is in keeping with 2013, in which there was no meaningful coverage in general for women's sports. I believe this is down to the monetary incentive as broadcasters rely on subscription packages and payment from their audiences, meaning they must keep up with societal trends and interests to make profit. Whereas, with traditional print media, they are at the behest of their advertisers, therefore their coverage does not need to be an extension of the wider societal shifts, but rather the values of their individual advertisers and their already established demographics. This is also shown through the content print media has traditionally displayed, as they focus so much more on the appearance and family life of female athletes, and have neglected athletic ability when talking about women in general. This was more prevalent when print existed without their online counterparts, as these have evolved to fit into an online demographic away from their physical versions. Interestingly, one of the most controversial newspapers, the Daily Mail, is completely separate to the Mail Online. A study by Signal AI has suggested that the words used between Mail Online and the Daily Mail differ greatly. For example, the words used that the Mail Online use the most that don't appear in the Daily Mail are Instagram, beauty, war and model, which are undoubtedly used in clickbait to attract a diverse audience. So, this is showing that the media companies are using their products to attract new female audiences, and this is now expanding to sports media which has traditionally neglected targeting female audiences in general. This all boils down to the perpetuation of masculinity and femininity within the media and in the realm of sports. Sport was initially a male-oriented pastime as the educated and elite men used their wealth and time to foster this new activity. Therefore, for women, who by contrast were expected to stay in and nurture families, were culturally blocked from this. As a result of this, women's sport has lagged behind men's by quite a distance, and this emergence of women's sport we have seen in the past few decades has been met with a differing coverage style by the media. As mentioned before, the focus on coverage is different between men and women. If we delve into the Twitter output of broadcasters, it is interesting to monitor how they choose to still approach women in sports. For example, Eurosport have a vested interest in many sports such as football, snooker and tennis. Therefore, it would be smart to suggest their product would contain a wide spectrum of coverage for both men and women, as they are a competitor of the monopolised landscape created by Sky Sports and TNT at this moment in time. But they focus heavily on the women stars of the game, which is not reflected when covering men's sports. The male sport coverage is very centred on teams and overall news in the sport, but when covering the US Open, they tend to only gravitate towards top women's names, even in a sport that leaves the door open to focus on other talented individuals. Emma Raducanu is mentioned numerous times with little mention of others, except when tweeting about them being spotted at the Met Gala, which further consolidates this idea that coverage of female athletes is centred around their actions off the pitch and their appearance. But is this going to change with the new wealth of coverage for women's sports? Or will this keep on as the broadcasters only want to pursue the continued coverage of women's sport due to the monetary benefit? The best way for me to look at this is to think of the amount of content a broadcaster produces once they sign a deal with women's sports, as compared to when they had no vested interest. So let's take a look at the coverage of Sky Sports. Sky Sports, as mentioned before, signed a new deal for the WSL in 2021, again after all the data and records were suggesting a surge in interest was taking place for women's football. and this has led to them introducing new styles of content and shows to promote the new thing they have paid for. For example, Inside the WSL is a new show created after their rights deal, and this is something that would not have been attempted prior to the deal they signed, as even promoting this on the same day on 4 separate Sky Sports Twitter accounts consolidates the idea that a new outward diversity is being shown because money is now filtered exclusively to them for that diversity benefit. I mentioned in last week's podcast about how when broadcasters get exclusive rights, they start to produce reminder or miscellaneous content, meaning they step outside the 90 minutes or the match to look to milk every area in which they can to lead audiences to their product. And this has been no different with regards to Sky Sports, as they are now tweeting about the WSL Hall of Fame and the goals of the round, which prior to 2021 and their new deal would be content exclusively mentioned in regard to the men's game. In my opinion, it's no bold statement to suggest that broadcasters are only now using women's sports because it has become profitable to do so, and hopefully this can lead to a shift from the archaic way the media had been portraying sportswomen in the past. Thank you so much for watching.